From the outbreak of rebellion to the day of his enthronement as sovereign ruler of Nebadon, Michael never interfered with the rebel forces of Lucifer. They were allowed to run a free course for almost 200,000 years of Urantia time. Christ Michael now has ample power and authority to deal promptly, even summarily, with such outbreaks of disloyalty. But we doubt that this sovereign authority would lead him to act differently if another such upheaval should occur. Since Michael elected to remain aloof from the actual warfare of the Lucifer Rebellion, Gabriel, his right hand, called his personal staff together on Edentia. Edentia is the capital of Melchizedeks, our constellation, which the system of Satania is in. Like, I don't know, this illustration. Satania is a city. Melchizedek is a county. That system is in this constellation. Since Michael elected to remain aloof from the actual warfare of the Lucifer Rebellion, Gabriel called his personal staff together on Edentia and, in council with the Most Highs, elected to assume command of the loyal host of Satania. Basically, Gabriel was like, man, whoever is not following this nonsense, we in charge now. Michael remained on Salvington. Salvington is the capital of Nebadon, the local universe. All this takes place within which Michael rules. Michael remained on Salvington while Gabriel proceeded to Jerusalem and establishing himself on the spear dedicated to the Father, the same universal Father whose personality Lucifer and Satan had questioned. In the presence of the foregathered host of loyal personalities, he displayed the banner of Michael, the material emblem of the Trinity government of our creation, the three azure blue concentric circles on a white background. I know that was a lot. And basically, Gabriel showed up to Jerusalem, and literally they got evidently some sort of banner, like a flag, that represents creation, and it's three circles within each other, and that ultimately stands for how the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit. I'm gonna skip. The Lucifer emblem was a banner of white with one red circle in the center of which a black solid circle appeared. There was a war in heaven. Michael's commander and his angels fought against the dragon. This is actually a quote out of the Bible, out of Revelations. They're just quoting because they're bringing clarity to this whole situation. But yeah, it's been said Michael fought against the dragon, and the dragon represents the totality of these wicked fools, Lucifer, Satan, Caligastia, and their minions. This war in heaven was not a physical battle as such a conflict might be conceived on Urantia. In the early days of the struggle, Lucifer held forth continuously in the planetary amphitheater. Gabriel conducted an unceasing exposure of the rebel sophistries, that word again, slick talk, from his headquarters taken up near at hand. The various personalities present on the sphere who were in doubt as to their attitude would journey back and forth between these discussions until they arrived at a final decision. Check what they saying, bro. They on Jerusalem, the capital of Satania. Lucifer's on this side, spouting his BS, and Gabriel's over here repping the truth. And beings who were so swept up in this rebellion because Lucifer was a high-ranking being, and he had a lot of subordinates, and he was brilliant. And beings were really caught up in that. So they're actually traveling back and forth, hearing discussions, because this is a war. It's not physical. This is about ideas, and it's about eternity, truth, and lie. But this war in heaven was very terrible and very real. While displaying none of the barbarities so characteristic of physical warfare on the immature worlds, this conflict was far more deadly. Material life is in jeopardy in material combat, but the war in heaven was fought in terms of life eternal. If you following along, I'm pretty much finna skip over to part 7 just because I don't want to confuse people. But part 6, they're basically they're giving props to a loyal seraphim. I'm not sure if you've heard the term before. Some people have. Seraphim is another term for an angel. They're high-ranking angels, and basically his superior went along in the Lucifer Rebellion, and he was left in charge of a whole order of angels just by, delegation or his position already. So it fell upon him, and they were just talking about what this particular angel had to deal with. This, man, already, bro. But yeah, I'm gonna skip to part 7. History of the rebellion. The Lucifer Rebellion was system-wide. 37 succeeding planetary princes swung their world administrations largely to the side of the arch-rebel. Now, in this system, currently, let them tell it in the papers that Satania has 607 worlds. So they're saying that 37 of these worlds out of the 607 went ahead with this rebellion. I'm gonna skip down a little bit. Throughout this period, Caligastia was advocating the cause of Lucifer on Urantia. The Melchizedeks, another order of being, they're very important, and we're going to expound upon them. The Melchizedeks ably opposed the apostate planetary prince, but the sophistries of unbridled liberty and the delusions of self-assertion had every opportunity for deceiving the primitive peoples of a young and undeveloped world. Basically saying this world and our evolution in it was so early that they was able to game a lot of beings on this world. I'm just trying to go over, like, so I read this next paragraph if it's too much. Yeah, I read it. All secession propaganda had to be carried on by personal effort because the broadcast service and all other avenues of interplanetary communication was suspended by the action of the system circuit supervisors. In short, I alluded to in the fact of in the intro, the real quarantine, that we've been cut off and that there exists a whole communication that takes place throughout the universe. And they just cut a lot of communication that was going off coming out of Satania in an effort to quarantine them and keep that there, keep that nonsense, keep that foolishness, pestilence, dis-ease there. That's what they did. Yeah, upon the actual outbreak of the insurrection, the entire system of Satania was isolated in both the constellation and the universe circuits. During this time, all incoming and outgoing messages were dispatched by seraphic agents, seraphic meaning angelic, angels, and solitary messengers, another order of being. The circuits to the fallen worlds were also cut off, so that Lucifer, this is a fallen world if you ain't know. The circuits to the fallen worlds were also cut off, so that Lucifer could not utilize this avenue for the furtherance of his nefarious scheme, and these circuits will not be restored so long as the arch-rebel lives within the confines of Satania. This was the Lanonandic rebellion. The higher orders of local universe sonship did not join the Lucifer secession, although, well, let me stop there. Basically, they saying nobody in this hierarchy, beings that are higher than Lanonandek sons, which is what Lucifer is, nobody fell into that. They, were dismissive of it. Just down a little bit, still on part 7. In many respects, this rebellion was the most widespread and disastrous of all such occurrences in Nebadon. More personalities were involved in this insurrection than in both of the others. And Lucifer pretty much did have eventually a successor. Somebody came in and filled in for him as a system sovereign while he committed this rebellion. And I think his name is Lana Forge. That's the current system sovereign. I'm gonna skip down. With the arrival of Lana Forge, the arch rebels were dethroned and shorn of all governing powers, though they were permitted freely to go about Jerusalem. The Morantia spears, and even to the individual inhabited worlds. Let me quickly explain Morantia, Moronti. That's an interesting concept that was foreign to me until these papers. And what they're saying is Morantia is this level, this intervening level between flesh and pure spirit. See, even though we indwelt by the Spirit of God, the creator of all, there's still a huge gulf in the sense that we aren't perfect, even though we come from a perfect creator. And that gap that it takes to close that, and in your pursuit of perfection, this intervening space, this embryonic state, is called Morantia. This is where your soul is. That's where your soul is at, in the Morantia realm. So, to read that sentence again, with the arrival of Lanaforge, again, Lucifer's successor, the arch rebels were dethroned and shorn of all governing powers, though they were permitted freely to go about Jerusalem, the Morantia spheres, and even to the individual inhabited worlds. They continued their deceptive and seductive efforts to confuse and mislead the minds of men and angels. But as concerned their work on the administrative mount of Jerusalem, the system capital, their place was found no more. While Lucifer was deprived of all administrative authority in Satania, there then existed no local universe power nor tribunal which could detain or destroy this wicked rebel. At that time, Michael was not a sovereign ruler. And we went over that. So what they're saying is, again, Michael wasn't the complete sovereign ruler of this universe, Nebadon, like he is now when this rebellion took place, because he hadn't finished his bestowal mission. So it's a legitimate question, like, well, damn, why God just ain't stopped it? That just ain't how it worked, though. And we dealing with eternity. Our conception of time and the way things happen is a lot different than the divine mind and creators. So they got a process, evidently. Hold on, bear with me real quick. I'm gonna just skip down. Thus were these arch rebels allowed to roam the entire system to seek further penetration for their doctrines of discontent and self-assertion. But in almost 200,000 Urantia years, they have been unable to deceive another world. No Satania worlds have been lost since the fall of the 37. Not even those younger worlds peopled since that day of rebellion. They basically saying in the past, 200,000 years since this thing has started, no other planets and no other princes have signed up for that foolishness. That's it. Part 8. The Son of Man on Urantia. And I'm not sure if you're familiar. Some people may have heard that term. Some people haven't. The Son of Man was a title, and that's Jesus was referred to as, that he called himself sometimes, the Son of Man, the Son of God. The Son of Man on Urantia, this planet. Part 8. Lucifer and Satan freely roam the Satania system until the completion of the bestowal mission of Michael on Urantia. They will last on your world together during this time of their combined assault upon the Son of Man. Subsequent to their efforts to corrupt Michael when in the bestowal of flesh, all sympathy for Lucifer and Satan has perished throughout all Satania, that is, outside the isolated worlds of sin. Again, they basically saying ain't nobody in the system fucking with these fools, especially since Michael came down here. The bestowal of Michael terminated the Lucifer Rebellion in all Satania, aside from the planets of the apostate planetary princes. The Son of Man was confident of success, and he knew that his triumph on your world would forever settle the status of his age-long enemies, not only in Satania, but also in the other two systems where sin had entered. There was survival for mortals and security for angels when your master, in reply to the Lucifer proposals, calmly and with divine assurance replied, "Get you behind me, Satan." That was in principle the real end of the Lucifer Rebellion. True, the Uversa tribunals, Uversa is the capital of our super universe, or Vonton. True, the Uversa tribunals have not yet rendered the executive decision regarding the appeal of Gabriel praying for the destruction of the rebels, but such a decree will no doubt be forthcoming in the fullness of time, since the first step in the hearing of this case has already been taken. They're basically saying, you think our justice system's slow. Nah, though. They view time differently. We talking about beings that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. Justice for rebels is mitigated in a time fashion that's proportionate to that. You feel me? Like, they're on another level, man. And so is how they do things. Caligastia was recognized by the Son of Man as the technical prince of Urantia up to near the time of his death, said Jesus. Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast down. And then, still near the completion of his life work, he announced, the prince of this world is judged. And it is this same dethroned and discredited prince who was once termed the god of Urantia. Basically, Prince Caligastia, who is actually going to be the next episode because it's so close to home, was dethroned when Michael came down here and completed his mission. He was dethroned. He's no longer considered the prince of this planet. But check this though. The last act of Michael before leaving Urantia was to offer mercy to Caligastia and Caligastia. That was Caligastia, the devil's assistant, his right hand rather, Caligastia. So the last act of Michael before leaving Urantia was to offer mercy to Caligastia and Caligastia, but they spurned his tender proffer. Caligastia, your apostate planetary prince, is still free on Urantia to prosecute his nefarious designs, but he has absolutely no power to enter the minds of men. Neither can he draw near to their souls to tempt or corrupt them, unless they really desire to be cursed with his wicked presence. You heard me. The devil is out here, still running around. Now, this is a spiritual entity. You won't see him in flesh and blood, but what they're telling you is he's out here. And for those who are truly seeking, apparently they can find. Before the bestowal of Michael, these rulers of darkness sought to maintain their authority on Urantia, and they persistently withstood the minor and subordinate celestial personalities. Basically saying they were down here punking other celestial beings because they are high ranking. They couldn't do nothing with, if an angel just wanted to apprehend Caligastia, it's not happening. You don't have the power. But since the day of Pentecost, this traitorous Caligastia and his equally contemptible associate Caligastia are servile before the divine majesty of the paradise thought adjusters and the protective spirit of truth, the spirit of Michael, which has been poured out upon all flesh. Let me run that back. That might have been the most crucial thing I've said thus far. But since the day of Pentecost, this traitorous Caligastia and his equally contemptible associate Caligastia are servile before the divine majesty of the paradise thought adjusters and the protective spirit of truth. I mentioned before, we're all indwelt by this creator. The creator, it's astounding. And I know it's hard to wrap our brains around, but the creator, that one in paradise who put all this in motion, indwells us all by way of his spirit. Now, what they refer to throughout the Urantia papers, they call this spirit consistently a thought adjuster. A thought adjuster. Think about this now. If you make it to heaven or not, it's going to be because of choices you made. Your thoughts. The thought adjuster, if you yield to it, is going to take you home. And it works on you continuously. It's what's happening. Now, the spirit of truth, Pentecost, was the day that Michael left his planet for good. He ascended. He had already resurrected. We're going to get to this. He already resurrected. Left his planet, and he told all his followers, look, I'm finna leave physically, but I'm going to pour out the spirit of truth. That's going to be me, minus the flesh. And it's going to comfort you and convict you of all truth. You're going to know truth when you hear it and see it. Spirit of truth. Thought adjusters. They're big deals. But even so, no fallen spirit ever did have the power to invade the minds or to harass the souls of the children of God. Neither Satan nor Caligastia could ever touch or approach the faith sons of God. Faith is an effective armor against sin and iniquity. It is true. He who is born of God keeps himself, and the wicked one touches him not. In general, when weak and dissolute mortals are supposed to be under the influence of devils and demons, They are merely being dominated by their own inherent and debased tendencies, being led away by their own natural propensities. The devil has been given a great deal of credit for evil which does not belong to him. Caligastia has been comparatively impotent since the cross of Christ. It's part 9. Present status of the rebellion. Early in the days of the Lucifer Rebellion, salvation was offered all rebels by Michael. To all who would show proof of sincere repentance, he offered, upon his attainment of complete universe sovereignty, forgiveness and reinstatement to some form of universe services. None of the leaders accepted this merciful proffer, but thousands of the angels and the lower orders of celestial beings did. Skip down some. The arch deceiver has never been on Urantia since the days when he sought to turn back Michael from the purpose to complete the bestowal and to establish himself finally and securely as the unqualified ruler of Nebadon. Upon Michael's becoming the settled head of the universe of Nebadon, Lucifer was taken into custody by the agents of the Uversa Ancients of Days and has since been a prisoner on satellite number 1 of the Fathers Group of the Transition Spheres of Jerusalem. Lucifer's been detained and he's on a prison world. And here the rulers of other worlds and systems behold the end of the unfaithful sovereign of Satania. Paul knew of the status of these rebellious leaders following Michael's bestowal, for he wrote of Caligastia's chiefs as spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Michael, upon assuming the supreme sovereignty of Nebadon, petitioned the Ancients of Days for authority to intern all personalities concerned in the Lucifer Rebellion, pending the rulings of the super universe tribunals in the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer, placed on the records of the Uversa Supreme Court almost 200,000 years ago, as you reckon time. Gabriel has a case against Lucifer, and this is about to be adjudicated. I know this is some dense territory, but we just talking about real high level government functioning in a spiritual sense. I'm gonna skip down a little bit. And they are saying that Satan was allowed to make periodic visits to apostate princes on the fallen worlds until another son of God should be accepted by such apostate worlds, or until such time as the courts of Uversa should begin the adjudication of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer. I know that's real thick. It's even thick for me, but what they're saying is Satan, for a time being, even though Lucifer was detained, Satan still continued visiting certain worlds that were caught up in rebellion because he had yet to be apprehended at the time, essentially. Satan could come to Urantia because you had no son of standing in residence, neither planetary prince nor material son. In this hierarchy, they basically saying a planetary prince, one who was loyal, would have withstood that, or even a material son who we referred to, and they're in the hierarchy, and they could have possibly withstood, the sophistries of Satan and Lucifer. Now, Melchizedek, we're going to get into him, has since been proclaimed vicegerent planetary prince of Urantia. And the opening of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer has signalized the inauguration of temporary planetary regimes on all the isolated worlds. It is true that Satan did periodically visit Caligastia and others of the fallen princes right up to the time of the presentation of these revelations, when there occurred the first hearing of Gabriel's plea for the annihilation of the arch rebels. Satan is now unqualifiedly detained on the Jerusalem prison worlds. So Satan, even though he got apprehended after Lucifer, is detained too on a prison world. Since Michael's final bestowal, no one in all Satania has desired to go to the prison worlds to minister to the intern rebels. Damn. Like, it's like the preacher not showing up to a nigga on death row. And no more beings have been won to the deceiver's cause. For 1900 years, the status has been unchanged. We do not look for removal of the present Satania restrictions until the Ancients of Days make final disposition of the arch rebels. The system circuits will not be reinstated so long as Lucifer lives. Meantime, he is wholly inactive. The rebellion has ended on Jerusalem. It ends on the fallen worlds as fast as divine sons arrive. We believe that all rebels who will ever accept mercy have done so. We await the flashing broadcast that will deprive these traitors of personality existence. Hey, shit is real. We anticipate the verdict of Uversa will be announced by the executionary broadcast, which will affect the annihilation of these intern rebels. Then will you look for their places, but they should not be found. Quote, and they who know you among the worlds will be astonished at you. You have been a terror, but never shall you be any more. End quote. And thus shall all of these unworthy traitors, quote, become as though they had not been. All await the Uversa decree. But for ages, the 7 prison worlds of spiritual darkness in Satania have constituted a solemn warning to all Nebadon, eloquently and effectively proclaiming the great truth, that the way of the transgressor is hard, that within every sin is concealed the seed of its own destruction, that the wages of sin is death.